Good morning, Meadowview Mustangs. This is Mrs. Stoessel here with your small group reading. I've really enjoyed reading your pen pal letters and getting to know you better that way. And for all of you who haven't done that yet, go ahead and do that. I'll add my email address on the last slide, and so you can send me some email. I love to hear what's going great in your life, and I'm here for you if you need to share what's not going so great. It's just important to be able to share with people in your life that care about you. And I do care about you. So, for further ado, let's get going on our small group reading. This week's lessons is going to be centered around nonfiction elements. Nonfiction stands for not false, meaning that it's real. If you remember, last week's lessons were about narrative or fictional stories. And those have characters that may or may not be real. They might have animals in them. They'll have a setting, when and where the story takes place, a problem, what went wrong in the story, and a solution, how did it get fixed? And of course, you include the plot, and that's what happened in the order that it happened in. But when you look at nonfiction elements, you're looking at a book that is real. And this book, All About Astronauts by Bill Kirk, is just that. It's nonfiction and it is real. And of course, as it says, it's all about astronauts. So let's take a look. Let's look at the elements of nonfiction together. Elements simply mean parts of. So what are the parts of a nonfiction book that you might see in a nonfiction book? If you look up here, we have the table of contents, glossary, index, heading, caption, and photograph. And there are some others, but these are the ones that are used most often in nonfiction books. So let's get started. What we're going to do is I'm going to read, and you can read along with me, a part of a nonfiction book that might be, and then we're going to try to decide which element does that part belong to. Let's look at this first. Magnets help us. Magnets can help us in many ways. They can help us pack things up and make a refrigerator door stay closed. There are helpful magnets all around you. Let's look. Is it a table of contents? Table of contents, usually you're going to see where you're going to have chapter titles or something of that nature. Is it a glossary? Glossary, it looks like a dictionary. An index, it tells you what page things are on. No. Heading. Heading tells you what you're going to read about next. Yes, that must be it, because the heading, Magnets Help Us, is going to tell us what we're going to read about next, about magnets helping us. But remember, I always look through and see caption. Caption tells about a picture or photograph, excuse me, and then a photograph, a real picture. No. So we're going to go ahead and put heading because it tells you what you're going to read about. It helps the reader know. Let's look at this one. I see chapters listed, and it looks like titles. What might that be? If you picked table of contents, you're absolutely right. And that helps you know if you want to, for instance, find out just about shark attacks, what chapter would you go to? Shark attacks. Chapter 4, that's right. So I could turn to page 16 and find out about shark attacks. All right, let's look here. I see words that are like in dark or than the other words. And then let's see, it says antenna, thin feelers on the heads of some animals. Colony, a group of animals that live together. Larva, animals that go through major body changes before becoming an adult. And molt, to shed hair, feathers, skin, or shell. Those are definitions of those words that are in bold. So which one would that be? Yes, glossary is the answer. How about this? This is a very interesting photograph, looks like of a toad. And it says here, wait a minute, this is what it tells us. The red-eyed tree frog lives in the rainforest. So that right there is telling us about the photograph. What nonfiction element from up here tells us about the photograph? That's, yes, the caption. It's going to tell you about the photograph. You always want to make sure, students, when you're reading, that you don't not read those parts, because sometimes they're the most important pieces, excuse me, pieces of information. All right, here I see a photograph. Looks like a photograph of a spider to me. It does not say anything underneath it, so we know it's not captioned. Oh, and we do have photograph right there. So a photograph is like a picture, isn't it? Photograph. Then we have words right here, and they have numbers after them. Oh, I remember seeing this in a book once, and I wanted to find out something very specific, and it helped me know what page I could go to in the book. That's called an index. An index helps you know where you can find specific information. Sometimes there's 2 pages or more, like for instance, beetles. You can find information about beetles here on page 16 and 75. Usually your index is found at the end of the book. Here's our nonfiction book that we're going to be reading this week. The title is All About Astronauts, and the author is Bill Kirk. So we know we're going to be reading about something that is real, that is not false. Let's begin. Here we have one of those nonfiction elements, don't we? That's called the table of contents. On there lets you know what's in each chapter and what page you can find that chapter beginning on. Table of contents. Chapter 1. Let's begin reading. Walking on the moon. Astronauts travel into space. The astronauts work in teams to do special jobs in space. The jobs are called missions. One team of US astronauts had a very special mission to fly from Earth to the moon. In July of 1969, people all over the world watched on TV as the team arrived at the moon. Astronaut Neil Armstrong became the first person to walk on the moon. Oh, I see some more text down here. It says 2 astronauts place a US flag on the moon. There's a photograph of it. What do we call the text that tells what the photograph means? It's called the caption, isn't it? Captions are very important parts of nonfiction books because they tell you about those real photographs, and you always get some very interesting information from it. Here is another caption. A boy studies a moon rock on display. I would not have known what exactly he was looking at if I had not read the caption, but now I know it was a moon rock. Let's continue to read. And boys and girls, let me remind you, I really want your eyes on the text, that you actually try to read the words with me out loud as I read them. And that's why I'm not going really fast. So just try to stay with me. Are you ready? Let's begin. After that, other astronauts went on missions to the moon. They collected samples of moon rocks and moon dirt, and they brought their collections back to Earth. Scientists studied the samples. Many people went to look at the moon rocks on display in museums. Now let's look at what we see as Chapter 2. I find some text underneath Chapter 2. It says, Becoming an Astronaut. I noticed that it's darker, it's actually even a different color, and the font, the size of the letters seem bigger. I wonder why that is. What nonfiction element is that? Yes, it's the chapter title or the heading. And the heading or chapter title tells what the reader is about to read. It sets the purpose for reading. Let's read. It takes a lot of study and hard work to become an astronaut. The men and women who become astronauts must be excellent students. In college, they study math and science. They need to learn all about Earth, other planets, and outer space. Now, before I go on to this side, I see some more text. It's really important, boys and girls, when you're reading nonfiction, that you read all the pieces of it on a page. I call all these extra little pieces like nuggets of knowledge. For example, down here, I see a photograph of, well, it's labeled for me, Earth and Moon. And I know that if you show parts of something, what nonfiction element that would be, the diagram, it tells you parts of something, and it helps you know and be able to identify those parts. Here, it says this is what Earth looks like to astronauts on the moon. And then over here, the word astronaut means sailor among the stars. So we have here is a caption for this, and this is one of those little nuggets that you can look at. Now, as we continue to study our nonfiction elements this week, boys and girls, I want you to go into your own books at home and see if you can identify some of those nonfiction elements too. See you tomorrow. Bye.